Ohio State's opened it up, and they are certainly letting it go. Quarterback, wide receiver, running back, I could make the argument all three of those rooms for Ohio State are as loaded, respectively, as any of those rooms are for any other program in America. And this is a team coming off a national championship game appearance, but yet the standard there is such that they're like a racehorse. We use this metaphor a lot, the racehorse with the blinders on, and it can't really look to its left or right. Therefore, Ohio State football, from an operational standpoint to a game day standpoint to a hiring standpoint and a recruiting standpoint, they don't even act like they're aware how thoroughly they're lapping the Big Ten because they don't really care where they stand in the Big Ten. It's not how they measure themselves. They are so far removed. They're in a different galaxy of standards. And so when you watch Ohio State operate and you look at how much talent they're stacking, I guess an old school way of looking at it would be saying, well, how many touchdowns do you need to beat everyone up here by? They don't care about that, man. You know what they remember? They remember how many touchdowns they got beat by in the national title game. They don't care, man. They're gonna smoke everyone in all likelihood in the Big Ten this year. But they still hadn't won the top prize in the industry. They still under Ryan Day, that is. They haven't won it. Wow, they're loaded. So I was reading over on bucknuts.com today. Dave Biddle, a lot of the guys over there, I mean, they had blowout coverage as they normally do. There were really good results yesterday, but that quarterback room, I was reading some of the staff talking over there about Jack Miller. Jack Miller is one of three quarterbacks for Ohio State that would start at most places. C.J. Stroud, I saw Dave Biddle talking over there. I agree that C.J. Stroud has got to be the leader in the clubhouse there. Talked to someone close to Ohio State this week who was adamant that this is not decided. And I agree. I don't think it's decided yet. But if you look at C.J. Stroud and then you look at Kyle McCord ripping some balls yesterday and you look at Jack Miller, I think Jack Miller, as the guys on Bucknuts were talking about, it's a really peculiar case. Because on one hand, you got an ultra-talented quarterback there. But then he's probably looking up at C.J. Stroud. And at the very least, he's looking parallel at Kyle McCord, at the very least. And then if you happen to look in the rearview mirror, they got the number one quarterback in America committed for this upcoming cycle. And so it's great to have a competitive spirit, and you don't commit there if you don't have one in all likelihood. But I just wonder about a guy like Jack Miller. Just kind of pulling a name. You can pull any of those names out of the hat. How in the world does he process what's going on up there? No matter how he processes it, this ends good for Ohio State. I'm going to talk about the same element in play at the receiver position right now. Their quarterback room at Ohio State is so good that it's very likely someone's future national championship hopes reside in that room, inside those four walls. You know history as well as I do. It's very unlikely all these guys stay on campus over the next 2 or 3 years. I don't enjoy talking about that a whole lot. It's not a theme I like to hit on regularly, but I am a realist, and I know not all three of those guys in all likelihood are staying on campus. One of them is probably going to transfer somewhere and turn some team into a national championship contender. That's how good Ohio State is. It's like Joe Burrow a few years ago. We didn't know it, but LSU's best hope at winning a championship in this era was not even in Baton Rouge. He was in Columbus, Ohio. Well, who's to say Jack Miller doesn't transfer to fill-in-the-blank U and ends up being their biggest hope in a generation for a championship? They're loaded, man. Ohio State's loaded. I'm not concerned with how they're going to keep guys in any position room. If you watched him at receiver, we can take a break from talking about how loaded they are at quarterback. Let's talk about how loaded they are at receiver. They got so many guys all over the place. It's so popular. I think people kind of find it in vogue now. They don't want to talk about how good you are. They want to skip past that, and they want to say, but you know, that old transfer portal, they're not going to be able to keep all these guys. Cool. No, they're probably not. You know what they'll still be? They'll still be a winner. They will win no matter what, because by default, by the very nature of the transfer portal, the guys leaving 99% of the time are the guys that are probably really good. They could be really high character kids. They tried, they were fully dedicated, and they just were not good enough. They didn't have enough God-given ability, even with those 4 and 5 stars next to their name, to get on the field for you. Because I'm looking at the list. They got so many of them, I have to write them down. You look at Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson coming back. Those are names you know. Did you see Marvin Harrison Jr.? You've seen Emeka Egbuka kind of kicked it off for him yesterday. Jaden Ballard's a guy I talked about a lot last week. Like, they love him. He's really a burner that probably gets overshadowed a lot because of Egbuka. They got Jamison Williams, Julian Fleming. Have we already forgot about that name? No, man, not all those guys are going to stick around, but it doesn't matter because a critical mass of them are going to stick around. And the ones who do are the ones, again, by default, who are the best among that crop. So man, there are top 20 receivers in America on their roster right now that are not going to be good enough to get on the field, to put a finer point on how loaded the Ohio State wide receiver room is. As for their defense, because we can talk about offense all day, their defense, I don't know, because I don't really look at their spring game and their format for a spring game, because they don't tackle in the spring game, as being conducive to drawing conclusions. Like, I've got concerns about them at defensive back. It varies based on who you're talking to in and around the Ohio State program as to how many people echo that sentiment. Some people would indicate to you there have been gains made there. We already talked about and chronicled the coaching changes they made in the secondary. I say that to say this. I'll have to see it. I saw some good things, saw some not so good things yesterday. Now, the question's going to be, as you look up and down their schedule come fall, when are we going to know? I kind of talked about this last year with Ohio State secondary, to be honest with you. When are we going to know? They got Oregon coming in there in week 2. I think they opened with Minnesota. They've got some teams that can throw the ball, that at the very least will be committed to throwing the ball. I don't exactly know how many high-level, potent passing attacks they'll face in their regular season schedule, outside of Indiana, of course, that are built to give us a nice data point and a nice expectation level for how they match up against a Clemson or against an Alabama or against whoever in the world else makes the playoff, Oklahoma, Iowa State. And so I don't know is my point. They could be hanging 50-plus on everyone this year. I think they'll have an historic offensive year, and yet we'll still be asking, I wonder how much this translates to the playoff. I feel pretty good about penciling them in that far, though. One more thing. Even amongst a sea of really good players, TreVeyon Henderson's going to be so good. TreVeyon Henderson's a guy who did not jump off the stat sheet yesterday. But if you've watched football for a long time, you know exactly what I'm about to say. And you know the kind of guys, they're few and far between, that fit this description. Sometimes you have a running back that every time they touch the ball, you just kind of tense up. You look and you just feel like something's going to happen. And he's one of those guys. TreVeyon Henderson is as much a can't-miss guy at the running back position as you'll see in college football. So, shockingly, I know, it was a really good day and a really promising future there in Columbus, Ohio for the Buckeyes.